Welcome back to Coffee, Kids, and Crazy with Seth and Brittany.
We missed you guys.
We missed you.
Hopefully you're doing well.
Yes.
Yep.
Very well. We hope. We got a good one today. We're going to answer a question.
I've never gotten this question before,
You
actually.
haven't?
Mm-mm.
I think I got this question simply because I talk about it a lot. And
Which is great.
It's an important topic for our children, for our families. But before we get into it, we have to do our memes.
Memes
Tell
make
us
the world
yours
go
first.
round. Okay, mine's just words. And it says, just legit offered my toddler $1,000 to go to sleep. Which if only toddlers knew what
$1,000 was and if it mattered to them.
Please go to sleep. I remember thinking, I'd rather sleep in this bed with this toddler and just be uncomfortable than to have no sleep for sure.
Yeah.
For hours on end because they're upset.
Yeah, I know.
So
Toddlers in bed.
But you have a meme too.
I have a meme too. My meme says, what I picture when someone says their baby is 62 months old. And it is a picture of The Rock on a couch holding Kevin Hart in his arms. Two grown men. It's pretty awesome.
Oh, we'll have to make sure to post that one for sure. I think
At
it's from
12
Central
months.
Intelligence. Is that the
I think so.
movie?
In 12 months, that's when you're supposed to start saying my child's a year old, right?
I mean, I think it got too hard for me to count. 12. That
know.
was in
62,
April.
that's-
And, I don't even, how old is that? It's like 5?
Yeah, I think 5. 60 months is 5. Yeah.
So, yeah,
5 months,
definitely.
5 years and 2 months.
I guess going to kindergarten orientation.
Mm-hmm.
How old are you? I'm 60 months. That would be a little.
60 months.
But, maybe that's easier for some people to count that way.
I know, not me.
I couldn't do it.
Do you want to read the question or you want me to read the question?
It's a big question.
It's a big question.
And it's your question, so go for it.
Okay. Something I've always struggled discerning with what you have taught, Seth, is you have taught about showing your kids movies with demonic themes as to not be afraid, but as a conversation starter. Where would you draw the line of this one we can learn from, but this other one would be opening a demonic door into our family? I'm still learning about the spiritual realm, and of course, we should not be afraid because Jesus is more powerful than any demonic power. There are some movies where I feel like my kids would be entertained by it, as opposed to just learning about it. Even if I brought the conversation back to God, I feel like being entertained by something is partnering with it. So this is kind of a few questions. First, I need to just tell you out of this, I would love to watch movies, Disney movies, kids movies, especially kids movies.
You have so many sermons around.
I've preached sermons off all the Kung Fu Pandas, Inside Out, Frozen 1 and 2,
The Greatest Showman,
The Greatest Showman, the one about Jack Frost, the
End Games,
Guardians, Rise of the Guardians. I have sermons on
I know you have a lot.
Black Panther, Infinity War, Endgame, Spider-Man, Far From Home. I preach sermons off this stuff, and I watch movies with the intention of looking for what God is saying and wanting to point that out to my children, because there are millions and millions and millions of children all around the world, if not more, who will never step foot in a church. And so I have a belief that God will put his story and his gospel, allude to his story in these movies. So while these movies are not talking about Jesus, there is death, resurrection, there is fear versus love, there is what happens in your heart happens around you, there is Inside Out, joy is supposed to be in charge of headquarters, but if you don't let sadness have its proper place in your head, joy will never be in charge again, and you will lose the joy that you're supposed to have, and God turns mourning into dancing. So if you're not dancing, it's probably because you may need to mourn over something, and you haven't. And so these movies actually teach very, very powerful lessons. Some of them, there's more to this question. I'm going to add to the question, but some of them, and I think this question potentially came from, I posted something about the movie Onward, which has some witchcraft stuff, some occult stuff in it. And I said, hey, I actually enjoy watching these movies with my children for the simple fact that I like to point that stuff out. I like to point out, hey, you see how they're meditating in that movie? Hey, you see how they're talking about chi? Hey, you see how I like to take that. I want my children to be exposed to that in an environment that is I'm in charge of, that is safe, and that I can explain. So what that means, though, is I don't allow my children to watch new movies, unless I'm there, so that I can see what they're seeing. I can watch what they're watching. I can see what's going on.
We navigate together.
We navigate it together. I don't let my kids watch new movies and new shows unless I can actually be there with them. And if it's a movie I don't feel comfortable with, like and by all means, I'm not saying you should let your children watch any movie they want to or any movie that's on the screen. I am absolutely not saying that. I am saying, and I'm also not saying let your kids watch new movies that you're not there. And for me, it's like, if I can't be there, you can't watch it. If I am there and I feel weird, we're going to turn it off, and I'm going to tell you why we're going to turn it off. If I see something in the movie I need to address, I pause it and I say, hey, we need to talk about something. And if they get upset, I said, hey, it's all good. We don't have to talk, but we also don't have to watch the rest of the movie. And in order to watch the rest of the movie, we need to have a conversation about this because of what's going on in the movie. So that's one part. And so this is important for me. The other part of this question that's on here is the whole, I feel like being entertained by something is partnering with it. And while that is absolutely, it is sort of true that if I'm being entertained by something, it can be little by little getting me to begin to agree with it. If I'm being entertained by something and I see it, at the same time, though, if I watch it one time and I'm like, oh, wow, okay, hey, we need to talk about this, that's intentional disagreement with the very thing that we're watching. So just because I'm watching it doesn't mean I'm agreeing with it. Agreement actually needs to be intentional. Now, if you let your kids watch movies over and over and over and over and over again, now they're meditating on that thing. You're not addressing it. You're not disagreeing with what's going on in the movie. You're not critiquing it. You're not explaining it. Then little by little, your kid is meditating on that thing. That's what repetition is a meditation. And eventually it can lead to agreement. But I don't think every single time you watch something, you're automatically in agreement with it, especially if you have the heart posture of, I'm ready to disagree with something that pops up on the screen. And I'm ready to talk about why I disagree with it. And I'm ready to point out why it's different and wrong and what's right. And I'm there with you. Anything you would add to this?
No, I think that's great. I mean, the fact that you're, willing to have those conversations with your kids in the moment, you watch a movie and you're like, oh, this is a great opportunity for us to talk through it. And I do that in different ways. I don't know that, I probably haven't done it quite in the magnitude that it sounds like you have. But I remember having a movie that we saw in the theater. It was a Disney princess movie. It came out and we watched it. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness.
You should tell us.
It was The Princess and the Frog. And, I love the storyline, but the voodoo guy, I was like, wow, this feels so different than some of the other ones that we've seen. And I couldn't figure out, I told Ben, I'm like, I don't want to ever see this movie again. I don't want her to ever see it again. And he's like, yeah, that I didn't like that either. I'm like, yeah. So we had a movie, like it would send us movies and
like a subscription.
Yeah.
Thing.
And I must have missed that movie was coming, so I didn't click skip or whatever. And so this movie shows up and Delaney knows the packaging, and so she's so excited she opens it up and it's this movie that I swore that we would never watch again. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what do I do? Because she was really little. I mean, probably 5, 6, somewhere in there. But so I unplugged the DVD player and I'm like, it's not working. It doesn't want to play. I didn't say it was broken. I just said it's not working. It doesn't want to play. Because I'm like, she's just so determined to watch this movie. And I couldn't throw in the trash can because she was watching. And I was just like, so when she was in the bathroom, I just took it and threw it up behind the refrigerator. And it fell down behind the refrigerator, which is where it lived for a long time till we moved. This is true confession, guys.
And then
Yeah. And then when we moved and it got moved, the refrigerator got moved, she found it again. And I was like,
So
oh,
crazy.
dang it. I
It
forgot.
must have slipped behind the fridge.
But, so we had this whole conversation around, at that point, it was a couple years later. And I was like, mommy just doesn't like this movie. It feels yucky. Like when the bad guy comes on, I said, do you feel how it feels when he's talking and what he does? Do you feel that?
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah. I said, yeah, that's an evil spirit. I said, and I don't want you around that. I don't want you to know that or experience that, even in a movie.
Yeah.
And, it's so intense that mommy's feeling it. And I really I want to protect you. So, that was the conversation.
But that only happened because you'd already seen it.
Mm-hmm.
You'd already felt that.
Mm-hmm.
You'd already made decisions. So I guess the options become, because there's a lot of this in movies. I honestly, I'm with you. Like, I don't think all of them have that same level.
Yeah.
So in this, you want to trust your heart and your relationship with God. If the Lord's like, no, that's not a movie you should watch.
Right.
Do not watch it. I've had the Lord tell me before going to a movie, yeah, this movie is definitely motivated by the spirit of fear, and you're not going to want to watch it. And I watched 5 minutes, and I have to leave. I feel it. He told me, and I didn't listen. So in our homes, though, as parents, it's like, if the Lord shows you not to, don't. Mm-hmm. If it feels like it's something you can have a conversation about, have a conversation. If it feels like it's too much, like, wow, that movie is different. Mm-hmm. That spirit that's a spirit. That's not just I'm trying to expose you to some sort of Eastern meditation, religion meditation thing, and I'm just exposing you to. I'm like, come on, your Apple Watch has Eastern religion meditation techniques on it built in. Your phone does. It's like, in some sense, you can't escape it right now. Mm-hmm. So you either engage and have conversations, or you avoid almost every single movie on the earth, unless it's VeggieTales. And if you do that, then you're teaching your kids a whole bunch of watered-down Bible stuff that's not even accurate. So,
and that we can't handle it. We're not strong enough to handle
exactly.
it. That's
and we
the
protect,
part that I don't.
protect instead of prepare. Mm-hmm. Now, here's what I am going to say. I'm going to change the course a tiny little bit. That's how I approach these. You watch the movie with them. You saw it. You're not just like, oh yeah, go watch whatever movie you want, and you have no idea what's going on. You watched it, you felt it, you knew, and then the movie shows up in your house, and you're like, yeah, we're not doing this. Abort mission. Like, okay, that's the approach I take. And I'll just tell my kids, like, yeah, we're not going to watch that movie anymore. Mm-hmm. Like, we watched it once, I stopped it, we had a conversation, we talked. I want you to understand what they're doing. Like, this is powerful. It's not powerless. It's powerless to go, we can't ever watch a movie again because there might be bad stuff on there that I don't want you to see. Like, well, then you can't let them out of your house at some point. And we don't want that. Mm-hmm. No. We want to be more powerful than that. So the other side, though, is there's been a lot of stuff coming out. It's been out for a while. I've had pastors come and say, Disney's trying to pollute our kids. Don't you see all this sex stuff on there? Don't you see all this? Mm-hmm. And even recently, I just watched a video last night, like all the stuff in Disney movies that feel like they're attempting to groom our children and sexualize our children. Like, that's definitely going on. I do think some people see it more than others, get afraid of it more than others. Mm-hmm. But just the other day, we're watching a movie with everything that's come out within the last year plus. Jeffrey Epstein, Pedophile Island, private island with a submarine base built into it. So submarines can come in and park at the private island. It's Pedophile Island, young girls, young children, people that, like, it's all over the news, not trying to expose anything that's not out there. It's public, it's mainstream media news. But like, I'm watching all this, and then my children and my kids were like, we want to watch The Penguins of Madagascar. And we're watching it, and I'm sitting there, and I'm going, oh, there's an octopus that dresses like a person that has stolen all the cute penguins off the face of the earth that have been put in cages and put on display for people to look at. And he's taken them off the face of the earth, put them on a submarine, and taken them to a private island to then turn them into monsters and drop them back off in New York City. And I'm going, this feels a little bit like you're trying to groom. Yeah. So we won't watch that movie again. Like, I'm not going to watch that movie again. I'm going to talk about that movie. Like, potentially you don't want to watch that movie.
So
with
what
your
would you
kids
say to your kids then? Right then, because you're not going to go Epstein Island and all of that.
Not at all.
So what are you going to say to your kids of, we are not going to watch this movie because?
Great question. I don't know yet.
Okay.
If I'm honest, I don't actually know, because this was literally 2 days before I got on the plane to come here.
Mm-hmm.
It's churning in my heart. I'm figuring out, what am I going to say to them if they want to watch it again? How am I going to address this to them? I might, like, I really actually haven't figured it out yet. So I might say, hey, this kind of stuff is happening to people. People are being taken like the penguins, and we want to be aware of it. And we want to, I don't know.
Yeah.
We want to be aware that people are being taken. I may not tell them it's a bunch of little kids, even though we have had that conversation. Like, we've been certain places and I'm like, hey, you need to stay close to me in this specific situation. Not everyone here is safe. We definitely don't know them.
No.
There's a lot of people in this environment right here that are unsafe. And we're doing ministry. So it's like, we're here to do God's work and help people.
Yeah.
But we also need to be wise and understand, like, not everyone here has our core values. Not everyone here believes like us. And there are people who might try to take you. I'm just honest. I've been honest with them, and I require them to stay near, stay close. So when it comes to that movie, I'm not sure, but I am going to have a conversation about it. But I that was the first time I really saw, like, oh, Pinocchio. They go to Pleasure Island, take the boys and put them on Pleasure Island. I'm like, wow, that's been out there for a long, long time. That movie's older than me.
Oh, yeah.
Older than you.
You're older than me, just for the...
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
just
older.
make sure everyone knows that.
And so I think that's another thing. It's not just the witchcraft, occult stuff, Eastern religion stuff that is coming through. You know, I love it. I love it when there's a meditation scene or like home, something like that. I actually like it because I pause and I say, hey, you know what? He's emptying his mind. And the meditation that we have doesn't empty our minds. We fill our minds with what God has said. We fill our minds with Jesus. We think about Jesus. We quiet down, but we don't go empty. We listen, but we're not just letting anything in, and we're thinking deeply about, it's Selah. We're thinking deeply about what was said by God. And that is Joshua chapter 1. The secret to taking your promised land is being strong and courageous, and strength and courage comes from meditating on God's law day and night. So I take that and I say, look, that is a counterfeit of what God has given for us. And they're trying to get peace. We have the Prince of Peace. We can meditate on the Prince of Peace while they're meditating on nothing, trying to be empty and see what shows up. We're actually meditating on Mr. Peace himself. And so I like that. But this one, I was like, oh, okay. You're telling us about stuff that's going on in the world, and I do need to have a conversation with my kids about it.
Well, I think, I mean, if pulling it back to maybe not the Epstein Island and then, you know, the penguins, you know, for anyone that's having a hard time with that, let's just look over here. Like, when I was a kid, Victoria's Secret didn't have billboards on the freeway.
Right.
But now they do.
Now they do.
And
they're all over the mall, any mall.
Any mall, right. So, and then when I was a kid.
And they're huge. You're like, hello.
Exactly.
My sons are with me like, oh gosh.
So just kind of painting the picture of where things have gone and what is acceptable.
Yeah.
And what is the push on all these different things of, you know, even if thinking about like your iPhone or my Apple Watch or whatever, all these things have like a tracking in them.
It's all, yeah.
Well, that was never before, but now it is. So, I mean, really, I could say, oh, do you want to know where I am? They could find me.
Yeah.
So it's not just, we're not just isolating Disney, you know, it's really just where society has gone. And we've kind of been a little bit deluded to the reality that they're pushing an agenda, which really is just going against the family that God has designed.
Yes.
And so really just paying attention to why culture and what you're protecting is the most crucial thing you could possibly be doing right now as a parent. Whether it's a movie that you watch with your kids, whether it's, buying them a device, understanding what comes with that, going to the mall, seeing a giant billboard of a lady in her chonies, hello.
Mm-hmm.
There's an agenda coming for our families.
And we need to prepare them.
And it's not, there's none of this. I don't feel fear.
Yeah.
I don't think you feel fear.
No.
And so this is what I would say to, if you're getting anxious or fearful, stop it.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yes.
have to remember how powerful you are.
Greater
This
is he
is
that's in
your
us.
culture, not the world's culture. It's your culture. So what are you going to do? Like, this is the best posture you could ever take. Like, in this last season, I have watched so many parents struggle with, I don't know how to be powerful.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what to do because we don't have any choice. That's a lie.
Mm-hmm.
You have so much choice. And it comes down to the moment you say, I choose what? What are you going to choose? I choose fear. I choose scared. I choose
hiding.
Exactly. I choose to be powerful. I choose to lead in this. And that's just what this is really.
Yeah.
Is I'm
An
choosing
opportunity to choose it.
to lead.
Yeah.
And I think that, again, however it is, there's just an agenda that's coming for our kids, and it has to be changed into the posture where I'm going to have ownership like never before.
Yeah. Here's a couple beautiful examples. So Incredibles 1 came out.
Mm-hmm.
I watched that movie.
You loved that.
16 years ago or 17
Yeah.
years ago, whenever it was. It was 14 years between Incredibles 1 and Incredibles 2. Incredibles 1 came out, and I'm watching it, and I'm going, oh my gosh. They want to live in their true identity
Yeah.
as a supernatural family, but religion has come in and said you have to live in a false identity.
You have to be
Do not be powerful. Do not let your kids be powerful. Do not use your power to help bless the
Right.
world. Stop. Just act normal. Like, wow, the political religious thing is attempting to stop the supernatural
You
family.
have to be normal. You have to fit in.
Exactly.
You cannot be.
That's the whole message of the movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then, partway through, I started watching more and more kids' movies with God. I'm watching these movies with God, and God would say things to me like, I allow certain movies to come out at certain times and be in theaters at certain times because the world needs, at that moment, the message I've put in. The message will be eternal. You can watch that movie 3 years from now when you stream it on your streaming platform, but if you watch it when it's in the theater, I actually commissioned that message to come to the earth at that time. So watch movies in the theater. I'm like, okay, cool. So I do that. Well, then Incredibles 2 comes out, and I'm thinking, there's a message in here that's got powerful timing for the world. Mm-hmm. There's a reason there's 14 years between the one, and I think God's involved in the reason. Like, just
It was a long wait.
That's a long 14 years.
Yeah.
Especially when Incredibles 1 was so amazing as a movie.
It was very popular.
But the point of Incredibles 2 is, the earth has realized that without the supernatural family, we're in a lot of trouble. And now some of the people who had worked so hard to keep the supernatural family down and keep them living normal are now rising up to go, we actually need you. Let's figure out a plan of how to it's all about empowering the mom. Mm-hmm. It's all about bringing the kids back in. It's all about making the supernatural
it's pulling something
again.
out of the father as well.
Pulling something out of the father. And he has to go, you know what? I'm going to empower my wife, and I'm going to be a stay-at-home dad with my kids. And I'm watching this, and I'm going, the world is now ready for the supernatural family. The world is ready for a powerful
That's a
family.
word for you guys, okay?
It is. And they can't stop the enemies that are here unless the supernatural family rises up. And I came out of that movie with so many notes. I'm like, are you kidding me? Yes, God. Yes, God.
Seth, we need to go to the movies together.
I know. Well, then I post something about it, and someone goes, well, all I saw was how they're trying to be inclusive and make sure everybody feels comfortable. And they got a completely different message than I saw. And I wrote them, and I said, actually, here's what I saw. You saw only the agenda that might be there. I saw God's agenda. Mm-hmm. I saw God's message. And we've got to remember, as parents, as Christians, we have to remember, Jesus only did what he saw the Father doing. So he's looking for what the Father's doing. Whether he's with the religious, whether he's with the full-on sinners, prostitutes, he's looking for what the Father is doing, and he's doing that. So I've taken this posture of, I want to see what God is saying.
Yeah.
I want to see what God's message is in here. And I have so many families that are like, all I see is the agenda. Like, yep, the agenda's there. And so's another one.
Mm-hmm.
The enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy.
Right.
And I've come to give you life and life more abundantly. Like, there's always two tracks. There's always two streams. There's always two flows. Like, I'm looking at what the enemy's doing, but God's doing something at the exact same time. What am I going to pay attention to? What am I going to communicate? What am I going to agree with? And I'm coming out of the movie going, kids, this is our opportunity. The Lord is saying it's time for us as a supernatural family, and you need to be empowered, and mom needs to be empowered. And for us as a family, it was crazy because, you know, Edna Mode, the little designer, we have a poster in our house. It's Edna Mode, Incredibles 2 poster, and she's sitting there and it says, "It's time, darlings." And it says DAHLINGS. And we have 3 kids, girl, boy, boy. I'm like, I feel like this movie's for me. I feel like this movie's for our family. Like, it has our name on the poster, and Edna Mode is going, "It's time, darlings." I'm like, so we bought the poster.
Yeah, I bet. I would too.
My wife bought it for me. Like, Lauren, this is my favorite gift you ever got me. I'm like, oh, this is so incredible. But the point is, what are you looking at? What are you looking to agree with? God can hide anywhere. Remember, Jesus said, be wise as serpents. That means sometimes God's wisdom might appear at first like it's demonic. It might even appear satanic, might appear like a serpent. God's wisdom
Which means we might be offended before we're willing to see truth.
And I'm definitely not saying just agree with everything. Just
No.
let everything
Yeah.
in. But what are you looking for? What are you paying attention to? What are you agreeing with? Agreement's intentional. I feel like I had one more thing about another movie.
I have a story.
Okay, go.
So, I mean, you're talking about your view when you see a movie or a scene and things that different people see. I remember Delaney was really little and she was watching The Lion King, and I remember her friend did not like The Lion King because Mufasa dies and Simba believes it's his fault, and it just was really hard for them to watch it. And Delaney was watching this movie, and it was one of her good friends, and she's talking to my mom, and she goes, "Mimi, if I was there, I would stretch out my arm and say, in the name of Jesus, no." But it's just like this, and she's stopping the wildebeest from coming down and killing, Mufasa, because she's taking this perspective of how powerful she is and then inserting herself into, this is my calling, this is my job, this is my authority.
Yeah.
I'm going to change it.
Yep.
Because this is what I see.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I just feel like there are so many parents that are trying to navigate, what to watch, what not to watch, and even the courage to stop and pause and have the conversation, with the kids. And I've done this with different movies. There's a little kid movie or show I remember the kids used to watch. It was called Ruthie and Max, or Max and Ruby, or something like
Ruby
that.
and Max. Max and Ruby.
Yeah, something.
Max and Ruby.
There you go. Seth's
Ruby
singing
and
it
Max.
now. And they watched it, and I would hear it and this and that. And I said, I actually don't like this show.
I didn't like the way they would speak to each other.
And I said that.
Same thing with us.
I said,
we did the exact same thing.
I said, I get this is a funny show. I said, but I don't like how they treat each other as brother and sister. I said, I don't ever want you to choose to exclude your brother because you feel like it. I want you always to protect each other. I said, so we got to find a new show. Because I don't like how they talk.
Yeah.
Because that's not, and there's so much of that, like, how these shows that our kids watch, it teaches them what they should know and how they should interact and what they should do. And so, I mean, that's just what you're doing, is we're just changing the narrative of we're protecting our culture.
Yeah. And to go back quickly to the whole Incredibles 2 and how it feels like the agenda is only to destroy the family. Incredibles 2 felt like it was to encourage and strengthen the family, especially the Christian family. To me, that's what I felt like, was this is here to remind us
How powerful
it's
we are.
time to rise up and stop the enemies coming at the earth, because no one else can stop them but us. And then the movie Storks. I'm like, wow, Storks had one scene at the end with a homosexual family.
Yep.
But the rest of the movie is about these two parents that are too busy for their child. And they finally discover their family's more important than their business. And they make adjustments. And I was like, wow. And even at the end, the Stork Mountain, the warehouse they built on it completely falls off, and it becomes a family mountain again. We had attached business so strong to the family, we started ignoring our family, and then it fell apart, and what you had was a strong family again. And the dad they build this whole thing on the top of their house. I'm like, this movie's encouraging family. This movie's encouraging husband and wife to be present at home and be with their kids. And even the storks, which I believe is the spirit realm, the whole stork operation is breaking off the business, the whole do business instead of
that
family
business is a bigger priority,
than
or
family.
work.
Just falls completely off the mountain, and what you have left is the
We had
mountain of family.
We had the same kind of, or a similar experience with the Stork movie was, watching it and, having actually the sex conversation, because like, that's not where babies come from, because Lincoln was trying to figure it out. And then at the end, when there's a homosexual couple and us talking about, how God designed our bodies to fit together as a man and a woman, and what it's required, so we had that conversation as well. And, we had the conversation of that feedback is always welcome. If mommy or daddy's work feels more important, we want, because they could barely give any feedback. The boy couldn't give feedback.
Yeah. The dad would turn the corner and he'd go, before you know it, I'm going to be in college and you're going to regret or something like that. And the dad's like, what'd you say? Nothing. He turned the corner. He's like, you're going to regret. Like,
So, and it just opened up this dialogue for us of those areas in one movie.
Yeah.
And just asking questions. And I think that this is, if anything, we're trying to encourage you to have permission to, intentionally do your culture, intentionally do your family, and welcome in, where God's using movies to have some amazing conversations that maybe you would never have,
or you're
without
struggling
a
to figure out how and when. And it's like, wow, that movie just opened it up. Let's talk.
That's good.
Yeah. That's our heart. Our heart is to encourage you that God is saying it's time for you as a family to be powerful again, to live in your true identity. Sons, daughters, parents rising up. There are enemies out there, and the only ones that I think Hollywood and God are telling us is it's the family that we need. We need you to be a strong family, and I believe this is a huge part of it. Looking to see what God is saying and doing.
So good.
In the midst of everything else.
Yep. Okay. Well, hopefully you guys are ready for that one.
That's our thoughts on that question. I love that. Is a great question.
Oh, it was a good question. All right. Well, go be intentional and change the world with your family.
Yep. Goodbye.